Good evening, everybody. I'm Karen Abrams, and I'm the treasurer of MORE. And I want to welcome you all to Robbing North Omaha Again, or How to Put Federal ARPA Funds in the Right Local Hands. This event is sponsored by MORE, Movement in Omaha for Racial Equity. MORE is an anti-racist organization fighting for racial equity in communities through engagement, education, and advocacy. And we're holding this conversation tonight with State Senators Terrell, McKinney, and Justin Wayne. And this dialogue is going to focus on the American Rescue Plan Act in North Omaha, and there'll be plenty of time for questions and answers from the audience. So the American Rescue Plan provides federal funding to support communities and businesses to restore resources lost and to help repair other damages resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. But how that money is going to be distributed and who will get it is a matter of debate. And so we're here to talk tonight about whether or not and how to prevent North Omaha from once again being left holding an empty bag. So this conversation is an opportunity for you to let your voices be heard. We're going to discuss how the ARPA money should be spent, and we're going to hear from Senators McKinney and Wayne and ask questions and discuss how best to address the issues that are raised. So with that, I'd like to introduce a couple of other MORE board members who are here tonight to help facilitate. We've got Alex Johnson and Ajamal Binden. Alex, why don't you take a second to say hi?
My name is Alex Johnson, and I'm a proud member of the board and professionally Master's Leadership Academy, Youth Development Nonprofit in North Omaha.
And Ajamal?
I'm the chair of MORE board, and one of the things I want to say, if somebody mic is live, so if you can kind of mute that because we're getting a little background information. I'm the chair, and one of the things that this event is so important for us because those of us who've been around for many years know that North Omaha has been exploited. People have, for the most part, not done a great job in working with some of the issues that we address over the years. And again, Senator McKinney has talked very strongly with his resolution a number of months ago about these organizations have existed, but they haven't brought many of the stakeholders to the community. So one of our goals is to not only get people to talk about these issues, but to do something about it. And more than anything, to get people to work with people of color, particularly African-Americans and families who are in need in North Omaha. As we say, the grass tops and the grassroots. And MORE's philosophy is obviously to deal with anti-racism and also deal with race equity issue, but also help facilitate important meetings like this. So welcome again, and we're excited that you're all able to join us. And we hope to see many more events like this where we bring the community to policymakers as well as professionals and different people who are stakeholders in trying to improve the lives of many families and individuals in our district as well as our community.
Thanks, Ajamal. And our panelists today are going to be State Senator Terrell McKinney and State Senator Justin Wayne. I'm going to turn the mic over to Terrell to introduce himself, and then we can have each of the panelists. We can have State Senator Justin Wayne introduce himself second, and then you guys can take a second to take a few minutes to discuss what's at the top of your mind right now. So Senator McKinney, you've got the mic.
How y'all doing tonight? Again, my name is Terrell McKinney. I'm a state senator. I represent District 11, which is in North Omaha. I'm also a member of the MORE board as well. Thank you.
Senator Wayne, would you like to say hello?
Yes, hello. My name is Justin Wayne. I represent District 13, which is Miller Park, north of Miller Park to the county line, back to around Lake Cunningham. Actually, I think we just changed that. So now it's a little bit past Lake Cunningham to around Sorensen Parkway in the Ames area. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, Senator McKinney, would you like to start out by talking a bit about why this topic is so important to you, and maybe give a little brief introduction to what the American Rescue Plan Act is, so we're all sort of on the same page?
The American Rescue Plan Act was passed by Congress, and it had allocated some resources to our state. I believe 1.4 billion is going to the state, 112 million is going to the city, and 111 million is going to the county. It's very important because this is once in a lifetime money. Resources like this is rare to come to the states or even come to our community, and it's an important opportunity for North Omaha because it's an opportunity for us to be able to take advantage of these resources, especially because North Omaha has been historically neglected and impoverished for my lifetime and even prior to my birth. So I think it's something that we have to pay attention to and focus on, because come January, it's important that North Omaha gets its just due.
Thank you, Senator McKinney. Senator Wayne, would you like to answer any or discuss why this issue is important to you?
Again, I think it's transformational as far as the amount of dollars that are first coming into our city, we are to our state. And it's not just the state level. So at the county level, they got $100 million. And then at the city level, they got about $112 million. So just here in Omaha area, we have $200 million from just those two local governments. And then you add the state population or the state money to that, which is another 1.4 billion, 1.3 billion. There's an opportunity to do some things that we've never done in North Omaha.
All right. So Senator McKinney, did you have some specific issues that you were hoping that the audience who's here today would be responding to? We had talked about when we were planning this event, having this be an open session for folks' questions or issues to be heard, but you may have had some specific items that you wanted to have us think about.
I would say it's important to think about what can we use that money for. And one of the things I've been focused on is economic development and entrepreneurship within North Omaha, because it's lacking. It has the highest poverty rate in the state, highest, lowest lack of investment, and I could go on all night. So I think it's important to focus on what we could use the money for. We also have an issue with affordable housing as well that needs to be addressed, and we can address it with this money.
Thanks. And so focusing a little bit on that, have you seen how, there are some plans out there already, coming from the mayor's office, for example, for how to use city dollars. Have you seen anything about the county dollars and how those are going to be allocated? Any information that you might have?
From what I've heard, the county is going to focus on mental health. A lot of the money that they're getting is going towards mental health.
Great, thank you. And Senator Wayne, any thoughts from you that you would like to have us be focusing on this evening?
Well, so even with the county, when they're focusing on mental health, from the numbers we're hearing, there's still $30 or $40 million left over in Douglas County. So while mental health is important, I'm never going to say it's not. They're not using it all for mental health. And so what needs to happen is community has to come together and start having conversations about what, what they really want to see with this dollars.
Okay, great.
So I got a quick question, if I can throw out here, and this goes to the essence of this conversation. Senator Wayne, you just mentioned that there's roughly about $30 million left over based upon what their priorities are. And I use the word there because the question I'm kind of asking is, was anyone in your constituents, or were you individually, both as state senators, asked where you saw the priorities in terms of where these funds are going or will go based upon some of the preliminary conversations? Have you had any conversations like that looking at your respective district or the communities that you serve?
No. The first time I had a conversation with Chris Rogers was 2 weeks ago. Both Senator McKinney were in a room having a conversation about a project or a potential project. And that's when we kind of asked him directly. They've already made those decisions prior to any conversation with me.
So have you had a conversation yourself with anyone about, and particularly we're talking about even the 30 million, I say the concern that's on the table, the elephant on the table is who determines a priority for the constituents, and also what role does the elected officials who are duly elected, who serve the constituents, what role do they have in this conversation? So Senator McKinney, my question is, did you have any conversations on where those funds are going?
As far as with the county, no, that pretty much got made up by the county commissioners, and we just heard about it. And That's pretty much it. But as far as outreach to us about any suggestions or anything, that never happened.
So I just saw there was a question in the chat from Mike Fegan asking really about sustainability. Since this is a one-time funding stream, and if funding is coming in for whatever purpose, how are projects or programs going to be sustainable? Has there been any thinking about that?
Yes, it's been conversations about how do we not only just get the money, but make it work and make it work long term for our community. It's not enough to just get whatever X amount of $1 million. It's how's it going to work? How's it going to be allocated? Who's going to be in charge of it to make sure that those resources get to where they're supposed to get in? People just don't come and just take advantage of the money and the community is left in the dark. So yes, there's been conversations about making sure the money is used in the best way for the community.
Senator Wayne, do you have any thoughts about that? How that could happen?
Because of the one-time injection of cash, my priorities look at projects that are big one-time hitters. So whether it's tourism, whether it's internet, whether it's providing, obviously better access to jobs, we're looking at one-time hits. And so one of the things that we struggle with in North Omaha is we don't have a lot of shovel-ready projects. So what that means is if we're trying to recruit a business, let's say a small manufacturer, we don't have a lot of land in North Omaha that's already ready. So it's how do we kind of combine and leverage these resources to make, particularly in my area, downtown, the airport area, we have a lot of land, but it doesn't have a lot of infrastructure. It doesn't have sewers. It doesn't have things that are necessarily needed. So those funds they can be used for those type of things. So I'm looking at the one hitters that we can do something to build infrastructure that later down the road we can continue to do big things.
Thank you, Senator. We have a question from Mark Welsh. Is the county's mental health plan going to reduce the number of people with mental health problems who end up in the jail and who are then sent to prison?
I would say that's a question for the county. I would hope that, they are allocating resources to reduce the amount of people that sit in the county jail for mental health. So I would say that's a question for the county. I don't have complete knowledge of what they're planning to do with the money exactly.
There's also questions. Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
I was just going to say, I just had a quick follow-up personally about that in relation to recidivism in the incarceration levels. And feel free, senators, as much as you're involved to answer, because obviously it's not going to be of total pertinence or awareness to you. In regards to mental health, who or what is the process for determining basically where and how these funds are allocated? So if it's mental health, how is it swayed to say this much is for recidivism or mental health to prevent rates of reoffense, or mental health while incarcerated, or post and custodial care, systems of care, halfway houses, things of that nature, recovery programs, if you will? What is kind of the breadcrumb trail, if you can, in regards to that, where you guys may be concerned?
I would say it's honestly up to the county who they want to disperse the money to. Essentially they'll probably pick a local organization, hypothetically say Charles Drewer One World, to execute the plan. So I'm not sure though.
That's the problem with not engaging the community, because as an elected official, I'm still a county voter, and I don't have the answers to those questions. And so you need to engage the community so we can have a clear understanding. It's one thing, I mean, we've seen it multiple times in North Omaha where we spend money, but there's no real outcome. If you recall, I think maybe 10 years ago now, there was an organization called Building Bright Futures. And although there was some tax dollars that went into that organization, but I remember picking up the World Herald and it said they spent $60 million over 6 years and didn't move the needle at all. Well, we got to make sure when we get this type of dollars that we're talking about, and it's a one-time shot, we can't afford to miss.
Excellent point. That's one of the comments that the elephant on the table. At the end of the day, what are the outcomes? What have we moved? And again, Senator McKinney, your resolution that y'all both talked about, Senator Wayne, at that hearing is like, we got all this money going into these organizations, but we haven't reduced some of the very poverty levels that we all talk about. So part of the conversation also today is, when will folks who are elected or public officials start to engage community, show a track record on that, and be able to demonstrate that that's really what the people want in so many ways? So that's the key thing, is show me the numbers, show me the money, and show me the numbers, and show me the people who we've engaged with. So that's part of the overall conversation here today. And I mean, one of the follow-ups to this is, what do we do about it also? I see there's a number of comments and things coming in from the chat, so I'm gonna stop there.
Yeah, so so folks want to know, when does the funding begin to get dispersed, and to what extent do the folks who live in North Omaha have the opportunity to influence, whether through the nonprofit sector or as residents? How can they influence how it gets spent?
So the county and the city is on a different timetable than us. We still have to go back to session in January, introduce bills, fight on the floor, get money appropriated, and probably at the earliest, maybe, I don't know, June or July. So that's probably the timetable for the legislature. The city and the county is on a different timeline. I would say, engagements like this, where, you can ask the questions or say what you would like in the community, send us emails or call our offices and, ask as well. I plan to engage with the community prior to the new year again, a couple more times. So those are opportunities as well.
Senator Wayne, did you want to address that? Okay. So then there's a question about how, the city's funding stream, and can it be used? Can it be used for anything? Can it be used for infrastructure needs in North Omaha? I mean, does anybody know what the city's plan is? And how does what you're doing in the state Senate intersect with the city's plan and the county's plan? It seems very opaque and hard to understand, not transparent.
So the city, they plan, I think I was on a conversation, I think last week. I believe they're gonna look at affordable housing, tourism for the hospitality industry, revenue recovery from the operating budget, public spaces, I guess parks, workforce development, crime prevention, maybe broadband. I know they're saying they maybe will use about 15 million for community. I don't know what that means. So I would say get on the city to, if we're talking about economic development, probably reach out to your city councilman or the mayor's office to kind of ask them what more can they do to address some of the issues you guys are talking about.
Senator Wayne, you're muted.
So I didn't want to answer the question last time, not because I didn't know the answer. It was because it's a little complicated. So we've already received 526 million last spring, a little bit after spring, but we didn't allocate it, so the governor can't use it because it's not an emergency. So we'll go back in the session in January. The city and county have their first half too already. So it's just a matter of the second portion, which comes next June, maybe, to complete that whole cycle of 112 million, 111 million to the county, 112 to the city, and 1.3 to the state. There's 5 main categories it can be used for. One is water, one is public safety, one is essential workers increasing their pay, but and the other one is tourism. But in areas of high poverty, and this is what I've been stressing, in areas of high poverty, there is a lot more flexibility to use it for a lot of other things. So part of this dollars were to go after the hardest hit areas in the healthcare sector, in the public safety sector. So it can be used in all of those things. And that is the part that that's why Douglas County can do the mental health, because that's part of the health space. But that's part of, I think, the reason why they don't want to have the conversations, because once people know how these categories work and what it can be used for, then you start figuring out what you're going to demand and hold people accountable. And right now, people just don't know how much money's out there. Senator McKinney and I keep joking about, we can get 30 million for North Omaha and walk around and pound our chest and say we got 30 million, which has really never been done before. But people are leaving off people will not understand that's 30 million out of 1.3 billion. That's not a lot of money. So unless you understand the whole picture, you might think, oh, well, Senator McKinney and Wayne negotiated some great deals and we're going to get 30 million. Well, in the grand scheme of things, we've already committed that we would feel like we let down our community if we only got that amount. We have to figure out how to do some targeted investments. And it's not just us. I mean, every community across the state is trying to figure out what they're going to do with money, because every county got money, every major city and first class cities all got money, and then the state has money. So there's ideas floating everywhere at this point.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. So there's a lot of concern, interest in hearing, first of all, what the two of your priorities are for the state funding. What are your areas of primary interest? You touched a little bit on those in the introduction, but I think maybe we could revisit those and go into a little bit more detail. And then also the follow-up question is there a way to coordinate the funding that's coming in from all of these different pots, the county, the city, the state funding, so that there's a little bit, I don't know, I guess a coordinated planning process instead of just each entity doing its own thing?
I mean, I would say my priority is to look at ways to reduce poverty or look at proposals or projects to mitigate the effects of poverty. Those are the biggest things I'm looking at. As far as partnerships with the city and the county, they got their own priorities, and we try to advocate and talk to them and try to push them to become more partners. But at the end of the day, they make their own decisions. They have their own priorities. But that's not to say we haven't expressed our concerns with making sure that, the county and the city is making a priority for North Omaha as well. So I would say, but my top would be looking at things that reduce poverty and effects of poverty in North Omaha.
Can you be a little bit more specific, Senator McKinney, about some of the projects that might be your particular interest, the poverty reduction projects?
I'm looking at stuff that, will allocate money for, entrepreneurs and small businesses to get more help and to be more sustainable. I've trying to look at ways to, look at affordable housing and make sure affordable housing is actually a thing. Because although people stand up in front of the community and talk about affordable housing all the time, honestly speaking, there is no affordable housing in North Omaha, especially when you look at the median income. So trying to look at those things and trying to be as creative as possible and kind of forward thinking. So I can't say anything specific because I've seen a lot of proposals and a lot of different ideas and haven't said yes to anything. So we're looking at everything, honestly.
Thank you. And Senator Wayne, do you have any, can you speak both to the way that the funding all seems to be out there in different pots and the right and the left hands aren't talking to each other, and also some of your pet projects that you'd like to see implemented?
Well, I'm looking down by the airport area and looking for manufacturing development down there and getting things shovel ready and creating a business park. It's been something I've been working on for 4 years now. We have a study going on with Highway 75 which goes right through, North Omaha, where from Florence, or my area I represent. So we're looking at some ways to move that traffic and figure out some long-term planning. I will add that I'm actually the rebel rouser in the group, and I'm probably going to introduce a bill that says if you get local funding from ARPA funds, you can't get state dollars. And part of it is the ongoing onslaught of nonprofits in North Omaha, that if you look at our affordable housing issue, I passed a bill that allowed for $18 million to go into affordable housing for East Omaha. And they all got together and basically applied for $1 million, which sounds great, collaborating, I understand that. But in their application, I think they inflated the cost of all the houses. And so if the nonprofits are running the free market and we can't actually get some business development and businesses in there who can maybe do it cheaper and make it more competitive, I feel like we're hurting ourselves in the community. So I'm actually looking at a bill to say, if you get ARPA funds locally, you don't get state funds. And that way we actually distribute the funds around evenly and throughout the community, because it always seems to be the same 4 or 5 organizations that get the dollars.
So there are a number of questions from folks who want to know how nonprofits can support funding going to North Omaha, and questions about should they go to one of the particular pots, should they focus on the city ARPA funds or the county ARPA funds, or should they go to a particular commissioner or council person, and they're looking for some direction from the two of you on that.
I would first ask that nonprofits, what is their plan? Do they have a plan to address poverty and decrease the effects of poverty? I'm kind of with Justin. It's not enough to just get the money. Year after year, I've seen a lack of change, and we've always given money to the nonprofits in the community. And I've been living in North Omaha for 31 years, and there's been a lack of investment in economic development, but there's still a persistent level of poverty that continues. So I would say, first of all, what is your plan to reduce poverty? Is that a part of your plan? If your plan is just about programming and pacifying, the effects of poverty, then I don't know, but I would say depends on your mission and what you plan to do.
I would encourage anybody to, if they want dollars, go to the best relationships they have. But if they come to the state, at least if they're from North Omaha, they have to have a plan with good goals. I don't care if it's my grandma or not. At the end of the day, this is a one-shot opportunity, and we can't miss this. And that's what I keep telling people. We just can't miss it.
This Osman, I want to ask a question going back to Senator Wayne and Senator McKinney, something you raised earlier. You talked about the money's been divided amongst the 3 entities of government in terms of local, city council, the city, the county, and the state. And obviously both of you are state senators, and I understand the advocacy and the conversation of the thrust of this conversation is to also put the elephant on the table of race issues and poverty, which many of these organizations have not made front and center. But my question specifically is, if you are both state senator, what impact do you have as state senators on the state money coming to help some of your very constituents who happen to be both county residents as well as city residents? Because historically, those of us who's been around for a number of years have seen the bait and switch that has happened. Again, no disrespect, but how do you spend $60 million and most of the funds never touch the hands of the very subjects that you're talking about who may be Black and brown and low income? So my question is, how do we put the state in this quagmire, in this dance, so that, again, we've all seen it come short of the glory of something?
Right. So, when I drafted the middle income housing grants and got that passed, I truly thought the grants were going to be competitive, right? Like and we put a limit on there, so it just didn't go to like 2 organizations. But what happened is they got together and said, we'll just all take $1 million and all go home. But that defeated the whole purpose. At some point, we got to be competitive to find out what the best model is. So the thing that I've actually spent more time with Senator McKinney outside of session than that we were in session, because we are trying to figure out the vehicles. We're trying to figure out the pathways. I mean, it's one thing to just say I'm gonna allocate, $200 million in North Omaha, but who's going to disperse that? Who's going to make sure and hold people accountable? We don't have the infrastructure, to be blunt about it. We don't have the infrastructure in North Omaha to do it. Whereas McCook or Ogallala or Sydney, they're all on the same page. If I go to North Omaha, we probably got, Senator McKinney, we got 4 plans from 4 different parts of North Omaha that have been presented to us that overlap each other, and neither one of them are talking or working together. So who do you give the money to, right? That's the question you're really asking, is who's gonna get the money? Well, yeah, we've been talking about that now for 2 months. So we have to figure it out, because again, we don't have the same cohesiveness and leadership, quite honestly, in the nonprofit sector. And I think that's intentional, that we could just do it. Whereas I go to Keith County and Ogallala and all the small communities, they're all in lockstep. They're like, okay, who wants the money? Okay, you get the money this time, we get it next time, and we all working towards the same goal. That doesn't really happen in North Omaha. That's our fault, not anybody else's fault.
Thanks, Senator Wayne. Senator McKinney, did you want to address that? Or Alex, I saw you on mute. Did you want to say something?
I was just going to pitch in a question from somebody, but by all means, Senator, please respond.
I mean, I'm kind of on the same page there. It's like, who do we give the money to, and how do we make it work? We've seen all these proposals, and the one thing I keep telling them, it has to be one plan for North Omaha, because if you go into the room or you convince somebody to introduce a bill for money for North Omaha or the governor, and he gives you 5 million, North Omaha is only going to get 5 million. But if we work as a group, we could get more. And that's what they need. That's what everyone needs to understand. We have to move as a unit, like the other parts of the state. If we're not moving as a unit, it's just going to be a lost cause, and we're going to get sold out short.
Well, I definitely don't want to necessarily steer from this, but just quickly to change gears, because I feel in some ways it is relevant to the current line of discussion. A question from Kim: is the city using its ARPA funds to help with infrastructure needs in North Omaha, or what is their?
I would say, from what I understand or I've seen, no, but maybe they haven't shared what they really plan to do. I don't know what they plan to do, honestly, but I haven't seen anything that says yes. I would say that.
So there's a lot of wordsmithing that has to go on if you want to talk about infrastructure. So how Congress did it was, they didn't allow for infrastructure development except for certain type of infrastructure, because they had already started talking about the infrastructure bill. So they left the infrastructure bill, what deals with street, roads, highways, and those kind of things. They thought that would already have passed by now. So what they did about some infrastructure is, they allowed for the development of water, so sewer, water, those types of infrastructure, building renovations in poverty areas, potentially if you tie it into tourism. So you got this big bucket of tourism where we can tie almost damn near anything into tourism. But as far as like streets, roads, and things like that, Congress was kind of banking on the infrastructure bill passing, which is another bill. If it does pass, Nebraska gets another $1 billion. So which it looks like it's going to pass here in the next 30 to 60 days, probably next January, it looks like. So infrastructure is kind of weird. It needs to be tied in either tourism, public safety, or some kind of sewer water issue.
Thanks for that. And so there's a couple of questions that I'm going to combine here. One is about what kind of entities are allowed to receive this funding? Does it have to be nonprofit or businesses or both, or individuals or developers, or who can get the funds? And then the second question is, once you figure out what kind of projects you want to fund, is there a way for the folks who are on this call tonight, on this Zoom tonight, to help North Omaha come together to be like those small communities that you talked about, Senator Wayne?
That was kind of a complicated question.
Sorry about that. Okay, let's first.
There's
The
like
first
4
part
different
was
answers in that question.
who can get the question? Who can get the funding?
That determines on how we write it. So it's just anybody. It can be corporations. But so the weird part about federal dollars, in particular these ARPA funds, is if a nonprofit or a corporation gets money directly from the state, they have to own that property or they have to pay it back to the federal government. So who gets it is how we write it. So now if we take that same scenario and I run it through a granting agency and we put out a grant for a corporation to buy this land, then they can buy and sell it and doesn't mean anything to the federal government. But if I were to give it directly to them and they were to buy that land with that, they have to hold on to it forever. So who gets it? However we write it.
Okay.
There's one person who is writing a bill, which I don't know if it falls into the 5 categories, but he plans to just give everybody a $500 check.
Okay. And then the follow-up question is, you mentioned earlier in your earlier comments that some of the smaller communities out in the western part of the state are they're just sort of working better together and negotiating how the spending is gonna work and who it's gonna go to is easier. And so folks want to know, how can we help make that happen, make that easy flow happen for North Omaha?
Well, first, since it seems like the county is the farthest one down the road, the community might want to ring that back in and find out exactly. And again, I'm not saying we shouldn't do mental health, and maybe the community does agree. But if that's 50 million, they still got another 60 million laying around after that. So if the first batch, all 55 of it goes to that, well, when the second batch comes up, what are you going to do with it? The city hasn't even really engaged anybody. There's a website that has not been shown to me, but I heard it through the grapevine that the city might be doing a survey. At the state level, it's just so hard for us to do a survey because we're talking everything across the state. So what we've been doing, Senator McKinney and I, we just been partnering up and going to multiple different organizations saying, what would you like to see? And part of it is because it's so factioned, there's no way to bring everybody to a meeting place. You just always miss people. And I'll give you a prime example. When you start trying to bring everybody to a place, people themselves think, oh, well, I have a direct relationship with the governor, or I know somebody who knows the governor. So then they go around you. And Senator McKinney and I will hear about a plan after the governor already said, well, you got to go talk to Justin and Terrell. And they're like, oh, and now they come to us with a full plan when they try to run around us. And now we got to be nice because it's not about us, but we're trying to put a whole North Omaha plan together instead of just these one-offs. So that's how you do it is we got to force the conversation at all levels with, and Juanita's on board with us. We have constant communication with her, but we have to just force the conversation to make sure whatever plan we come up with, which we hope to have, by mid-December, actually a written plan that everybody else is on board with. I feel, maybe I'm wrong and I'm just being a little selfish, but I feel, Senator McKinney, we've been trying, as many groups that we've been meeting with, trying to figure it out, where it's just, we've had twice where individual groups just decided to go to the governor or go to a different state senator, not even from Omaha, and maybe try to have them draft bills. So we're just doing the best we can and meet with many folks as we can.
Thanks for that, Senator Wayne. Senator McKinney, did you want to comment on any of that?
I would, say that's our dilemma, is getting people to understand that everybody has to be a unit and we have to work together instead of trying to go around us and trying to not address it, because we have to sell whatever this plan is to the legislature. And if we don't have the county or the city somewhat on board, it's a hard sell because they don't look at North Omaha as just North Omaha. They're looking at North Omaha as Omaha. So it ignores the inequities that have happened over the years because they're saying Omaha got X amount of dollars, all this money is in Omaha. Why are you talking to us about North Omaha? So we need a united front to even pull this off.
I want to comment on that. Where I think people on this call can do the most is they need to make sure that the city and county are in lockstep with the state. And here's the reason why. The first argument I'm going to get from a rural senator is if I want to do something at the airport, and let's say Senator McKinney wants to do something at 30th Street. And I'm just giving hypotheticals. We haven't said this is what we're going to do. But the first question that Mike Groney, Senator Groney, is going to ask me is, well, how much is the city putting in? And if the answer is 0, that makes it 10 times harder for us to talk about it's important for Omaha. Because they're going to say, well, you have your own city who has $100 million and they won't even put any money in, then is it really a priority for the city? And that's the issue. If we're talking about working together, that's the biggest issue we're going to run into at the state is the city and county going to be on board and help facilitate and contribute to what we're talking about?
Oppression runs rampant, gentlemen. I want to see if I can get some thoughts from the two of you about there is an event, a Zoom and a town hall at Westside High School that actually just coincidentally happened to take place at the same time as this. And I just want to quickly read the blurb and just get some thoughts from you senators, if I may. We need your help. How should our community's $250 million of ARPA COVID relief funds be spent? Join Omaha City Council member Danny Begley, Douglas County Commissioner Jim Kavanaugh, and State Senators John Kavanaugh and John McAllister for a town hall meeting to share your ideas Thursday, October 28th, 6 to 7 p.m. What do you senators think about that?
That's the fight. That's what we're up against. Is there's North Omaha and then there's the rest of Omaha.
And for me, it's a lot more complicated. I don't really represent North Omaha. You have a senator who does. I represent Cunningham, up by Hartman, 66th Street. I got a portion of Ames that stops at 48th Street. And once you get to Florence, I know what my community needs because we have multiple plans from the North Omaha Commercial Club, from the Kiwanis Club. Them being a unit has never been a problem. So I can go one spot. And matter of fact, we had a update, got feedback. I can go one spot and kind of get a pretty good idea of what the community is. Where I've struggled, and this goes all the way back to the learning community when I was in an OPS board, is depending on who I talk to in North Omaha, there's a different idea. And many of the people don't even live in North Omaha who got the ideas from North Omaha. So we have made a concentrated effort to try to be everywhere we can so we can do it. And so part of the reason why we're on this call and why we're having most conversations is just try to educate people about how much money's out there. And there's plenty of plans out there, but we're trying to be the clearinghouse where we gather all these plans and try to put something together that makes the best sense.
Thank you.
This is awesome. I have a quick follow-up, and I see where that sentiment Senator Wayne went, and I kind of follow that from a long-term perspective of the longtime activists and advocates. And I asked this of Senator Lauren Cruz years ago, and I'm throwing it out to both of y'all. How many people who live in North Omaha or people write letters or contact you consistently in your district or about some of the issues that we're talking about tonight? And Senator Lauren Cruz, late Senator Cruz, says, you'd be surprised how few people who contact me from public policy who are grassroots folks. Basically, it's a lot of the agency directors or folks who don't even live in our district or whatever. So I'm asking you straight up, is that contact from your community at the level it could be based on all the needs and the problems that we face in our community? And you can answer 10 letters, 10 contacts in a session, whatever, but help me understand how many people are actually touching your hand or making your phone Zoom or whatever to talk to you about some of these various issues we're talking about tonight?
So social media does a good job of getting feedback. But showing up to hearings, we don't do a good job of. One, it's in Lincoln. It's always during working days, and it is during winter. I get a fair number of emails, but I get a lot more from outside of my district. But what I think you'll see here with Senator McKinney and myself is, I don't know how else to say this, but from the old North Omaha ways, is we out here in these streets. And so what you get from us though is you can catch us on 30th. You can catch us on 16th Street. We know the community because we grew up in the community. And so there isn't a time, I mean, I was at Dina's the other night and we talking policy, small business development. And so I think that's what's a little different about maybe other people who have been elected into these positions is we just naturally out because we just naturally out. I mean, we have basketball games. You know, Senator McKinney's a wrestling coach. And so we just naturally out in the community running into people. But from a formal contact, no, our contact is low. And part of it is it's hard for senators and staff during session when so much is going on, and even out of session when I'll be in Lincoln tomorrow, and Terrell's been in Lincoln multiple times already this month. It's we don't have enough staff to do the proper communication to our district. So like Senator Groney sends multiple Western senators send a weekly or monthly column out to their World Herald or their little World Herald. We couldn't do that even if we tried. You could do it in the Omaha Star, and I've tried that before, but like I said, my district is so different that I go all the way to Washington County, so it doesn't reach the same. Whereas some of these communities have one spot to go to and they can reach everybody. And what I mean by that is they can turn on the grassroots in one spot and say, contact your senator, and they'll have 200 people contact their senator. We don't have that one spot. And again, I think it goes back to the factions we have in our community. At the leadership level, I don't mean elected. I'm talking nonprofit agencies, all of that stuff.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Did you want to address that, Senator McKinney?
I would say if we actually counted the individuals formally, the people from the prisons, I talk to them a lot, but we don't even count them like they're from our community. But as I will repeat what Justin said, because we're so active in our scene, we engage with a lot of our constituents a lot more than probably most. But I would say because of the session and the way it's set up, it's once it comes to like a bill that addresses something in North Omaha, you may get 2 people to show up, or that it's very tough to get a lot of our community to come down to Lincoln for a hearing, which makes it difficult. And then they look at us like we're crazy, like, oh, our community's outraged, but you got 2 people. When their community's outraged, you get 200 people lined up in the legislature with guns. It's just different.
Thanks, Senator McKinney. I'm going to switch up on you. We've got an interesting question about accountability. And the question is, what data and reporting will be available in the coming years on how our city and state spent these funds? This feels like the only chance that we have of holding leaders accountable for the decisions that they make regarding publicly available funds.
I would say that's it's a work in progress. It all hasn't been determined, and I would say that's something we need to discuss to make sure that wherever this money goes, it's used properly, and we could track it and make sure it's used properly. Because you get a lot of people that stand up and say, I've been doing great things in North Omaha for X amount of years, but then you drive around North Omaha and it's not the same. It's not translating. So I would, hope that anything we get passed has some type of reporting mechanism to it to make sure it's used properly.
Thank you, Senator McKinney. Senator Wayne, what experience do you have with that kind of accountability? Do you have any thoughts on that?
So I mean, it's going to come down to the organizations we give dollars to. So one of the things that so the grant that we did for middle income housing, which is affordable housing, I looked at the plans or the grants, and those are being spread out over 4 to 5, even 6 years. And so I'm going to introduce a bill this year to say that if you haven't expended 80% of your funds from the previous grant, you can't apply for the next grant. So that's how we start having accountability, is to make sure we put measurements and goals. And the quickest way to get accountability is to hit them in the pocket.
Yes, thanks for that. So there's a question, a follow-up, well, not a follow-up question, a question for you, Senator Wayne, that is, can you share more details about the development of the land for manufacturing in your district and what the public can do at this point to help those efforts?
Sure. So down by the airport, I've been talking about this for you. I'll share my long-term vision. My long-term vision is to build a bridge across 16th Street across the Missouri River. If you ever are traveling over the Mormon Bridge and you go into Iowa, you got exit 1, and it's actually an exit to nowhere. You get off of it, it's dirt road. When they first designed the interstate, that was the original downtown bridge that they were going to have off of exit 1. And they never did it, never had funding. And if you look at Highway 75, which gutted our community, again, this goes back to factions, it stops at Florence. Well, the old Florence, now Florence is a little further south, because Senator Lynch and other ones got up and their community came down and said, no, we don't want it to go through there. But the easiest way to fix that is to divert that across down by 16th Street and have a bridge go over there into Iowa and move all that traffic off. What that does is that brings back communities. It brings back neighborhoods, at least in Florence, not necessarily where 75 is now, but we are talking about having what we call bridge decks across 75 to reconnect those communities. So if you do that and you open up that gateway, you open up the idea for more logistical companies around the airport. The problem we have around the airport right now is downtown logistics are shut off at least 10 days out the year. That's the College World Series. Then you have parades, you have other things. So if you're a company who your whole goal is to move trucks and you want to be by an airport, you can't do that here. So if you move a truck and you got to find a different route that maybe delays a truck by 2 or 3 hours because downtown is shut off for 30 days out the year, that's a problem. The only way to go is to go up through Florence, which has stoplights in neighborhoods. And right now there's about 1,100 trucks going up 30th Street that we somehow move off. So if you open up that and you open up logistics, you'll have more manufacturers who want to go down there. The second problem is infrastructure. We don't have a proper sewer system down there, and it costs too much to put in. So that it's cost prohibitive. So if you look at Ames Locust, which is right across the street from Carter Lake, just that area that the city owns some of it, and then it's empty. And then you look north of that, past the little bit north of Carter Lake Park, Levi Park, you have a lot of empty sites. Well, that's because it costs too much to build. So if we can somehow invest dollars in the sewers down there and make sure that we can prevent some flooding, you'll have companies go there. And my theory is real simple. It's easier for people in North Omaha to go to Carter Lake Airport and across the bridge than it is to go to Sarpy County. So that's why I'm trying to bring manufacturing there rather than the emphasis still be on Sarpy County getting all the jobs. That was my 1.5 minute vision of North Omaha, well, District 13.
Thank you for the thumbnail sketch. We've got a person in the audience. Her name is Cheryl, who wants to talk a little bit about the participation issue that's been raised by both of you. Cheryl, the mic is yours.
I have lived in Omaha, North Omaha all my life, and I'm not going to say it, and it's a long life, thank God. And the problem, yes, it is that Senator McKinney and Senator Wayne, they do get out in the community. They're out there all the time. North Omaha has not had that for many years, many years. We have not had leadership and representation that comes and really listens and gets out into the area and addresses the issues that the people have. And so pretty soon it's just like anything else. You get beat down and they haven't felt like, well, what's the point? I'm not heard anyone. All I get is the nonprofit organizations, and I'm not saying all nonprofit organizations. and they have their way and they get all the money every time to their programs, and their programs are set up as to what they feel we need, not what we need. And when we try to speak up to that, we get beat down again. So hopefully with new leadership that we have now at City Council and other areas of leadership, that maybe things can change, and that and I will give, kudos to you, Senator Wayne. I know it's not your major district, but that doesn't stop you from coming to our rescue and listening to us. And I see you all the time. And I've been at several things where Senator McKinney has been, and we can have good discussions and bring up. But you have people, and you say North Omaha is all its little city. It's been made that way. It has been directed that way. And the reason why is because that's where funds can come from for nonprofit organizations, from the government funding through the city, and then it's directed into what they think is what's for the people. And that is not bringing jobs to us, because if you look at 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the poverty has not improved. It's increased. So I think, people who are outside of North Omaha, they get the feeling, well, hey, it's the people. They don't want this. They don't want to do anything. And it's not. And I hope that maybe through this, I don't know how many's on the Zoom call, but there's probably some others who are on there. But again, if you have been beat down to feel like you can't speak up, that it's not going to be heard, it's maybe you won't use the right words, so that's part of the problem. And I think that if there was some way that we could get it out to the people that, hey, you have an opportunity now, there are people who's listening, and these ideals that are coming out, just what we've seen, why can't there be more money put in to various groups instead of always going to the large or certain nonprofits, and then it's designated, and then those profits, they're not held accountable. And I'm hoping that Senator Wayne and Senator McKinney will get a plan that there has to be some accountability. And if they don't spend those funds the way that you had given them to them, then they got to pay those back. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Senator McKinney or Senator Wayne, would you like to speak to Cheryl's comments?
So I thanks, Cheryl, and glad you're on here. So part of the issue is exactly so I'm stuttering because I got so many thoughts. So in July, Senator McKinney and I started thinking, okay, how do we talk? How do we get feedback? And the problem that I have been running into with town halls is people with their own agenda outside of our community come in and start talking.
Mm-hmm.
And so we made a conscious decision to just go out and meet people, because every time I talk about affordable housing, everybody who lives outside of my community comes in and talks about, this is what we want for affordable housing for North Omaha. And then the perception is, this is what North Omaha wants. And that may not be the case at all. That may just be all the people who are getting money want. And so again, we made a conscious decision just to have, you can find the organizations, and most people know what organizations are out there. And Terrell and I are also running different circles. So we're just getting feedback. We got a running list of things, and we're just going to start hammering it out and then present it to the community, kind of what we think.
Senator McKinney, anything you wanted to add?
I would say thank you, Cheryl. And that's kind of been the issue of, and you hear it when you talk to people, or you see comments where, people say those people are lazy, or they don't care. They don't even care about their community. And I would say that's a strong lie. I think people like to focus on the outliers instead of the majority. And they point to the outliers to say, this is why we shouldn't give money, or this is why that community is going through what it's going through. But no one ever wants to look at it from a holistic perspective and a historical perspective about how do we get here. And I've saw and I heard comments from people that said, you know, funders don't want to give money to North Omaha anymore because of the violence. They've been giving money to certain programs for years, and the violence is still what it is. And my question is, what programs have you been given to? Because from my experience from my time organizing it throughout this year, a lot of the people that have been engaging, for example, in, you know, the gang violence with the youth have been the people that's not getting the money, and they just doing it on the strength of just the passion and love for the community. So it's like, who are you giving this money to, and where has it been going? And that's the biggest thing. The community honestly cares a lot. Even the ones that are in the streets care, but the city, the state, and the county haven't provided equitable opportunity for them to see another way.
And I want to just quickly comment on that and apologize for a little bit of background noise. It is dinner in the household. It's catfish tonight, folks. So I do apologize for that. I just want to address a couple of the comments from some of our participants, and I'm sure that everyone can do the same. I'm new to working in the nonprofit sector, but that is where I'm currently employed in youth development. And it touches all different aspects: gang violence, poverty, food inavailability, so on and so forth. It's a smaller nonprofit, and we definitely come up against the onslaught, if you will, of funds being allocated to major, well-known, sometimes typically nationwide or nationally recognized, ordained organizations, and it makes the funding process and streams there's a significant degree and depth of difficulty that goes into that. I'm 38. I've lived in North Omaha for 35 of those 38 years. So speaking about nonprofits that work for North Omaha and are in North Omaha, I'm definitely a part of that. And I can definitely speak to the difficulty that the senators have touched on with unity, communication, logistics, organizational dispositions, and just flat out oppression and racism, if we're just being honest here, which we are. So for the couple of those comments, I just wanted to kind of touch on that and just provide a little bit of insight from a private citizen who happens to work in the nonprofit sector.
Karen, could I make one more comment there? It's always when and if you go back and listen to what I said, I didn't say all nonprofits. There are good nonprofits who are working on small budgets, who are trying to do the right thing and listening to the people that they're trying to help. But every time you come up and you say the nonprofits in the area, the first thing they want to say is, oh, you know, they want to play that sensitive, that they're not the bad guys. That's what I wish people would listen to. I'm not saying all nonprofits are bad, because there are some who do good work and they use those funds accordingly, and they try to help the individuals that they're working with. But we all know, if we're being honest, as a gentleman, there is racism into what nonprofits do. There are certain ones that are going to have their programs, and their programs are determined by them, not the input from what they're trying to help. And I'll have to repeat, if you go back 15, 20 years, what have those big nonprofits done to reduce the poverty in North Omaha? You can't deny it. There are people who want to, and I just wish people wouldn't take offense that there's, because it's a nonprofit. And there was a comment that's made. Yes, how many people who work for those nonprofits live in North Omaha, and how much leadership is on those nonprofit boards and directors of those nonprofits? Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl. There's one question here, getting back to the accountability issue, that somebody asked about the idea of requiring the financial transactions of the funds to be treated as public records, no matter who is the recipient. Have you heard of something like that, or is there a process like that that could be used to increase transparency?
I mean, I haven't heard that, but I mean, it's a good idea. I would say because it is federal funds, they have to be more careful with how they use the money. So, I mean, that's one mechanism that's sort of hold them accountable. But I mean, we also need other things in place to ensure just because you followed federal guidelines that you also follow other guidelines as well to hold them more accountable.
Thanks, Senator McKinney. Senator Wayne, did you want to follow up on that?
I mean, so it's already going to be public where the money goes. If you're asking where those dollars goes after it goes to the organization, I really don't care. But I think that might be hard to. If I apply for a grant and I co-mingle it with other funds, it might be hard for me to decipher where exactly your dollars went. I don't really care though. I mean, it sounds like I'd do it. Don't bother me.
Thanks, Senator Wayne. And Jack, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
A number of years ago, a previous incarnation of Moore created a nonprofit report card. And what that was a list of the number of minorities on the board of directors of quite a number of nonprofits in the city of Omaha. It was a revealing document. We did not make any friends with that document, but I heard from Seattle, from a person who had traveled to Seattle, saying that they were talking about that nonprofit report card there. So it made some impact. I don't know how much impact it made in Omaha, but we could post that once again on the Moore website so that it's available as a way to just remind people that this is what the nonprofit boards look like. There are few, if any, minorities on the nonprofit boards.
Thanks, Jack. So a new comment just came in terms of, let's see, kind of gets at what you're talking about, Jack, in terms of a scorecard. I would recommend a community-based review board for accountability and a detailed outcome-driven scorecard. A completion score should be in place to continue to receive funding from the city, county, and state. Thoughts about that accountability plan?
I mean, I think it's a good idea. It's like, but what I would just ask when we're talking about accountability, what are we talking about, outcomes or accountability? Because they could allocate the resources to what we say, but if that doesn't mean the outcomes are positive or moves the needle. So I would say that. And I think it's not only just the boards, we also have to look at the senior leadership. If we don't have our faces in a senior leadership, it's not enough to just be on the board, because boards give a lot of authority to executive directors and people under them.
Thanks, Senator McKinney. Senator Wayne, did you have any comments on that?
So I'm not gonna make a whole lot of, I'm not gonna make a big comment here. I will be happy with nonprofits when funders of those nonprofits look like me. And my issue is there was a young man who applied to be an executive director at the funders organization, so the foundations. And this person was well more qualified, and they drove him out of Omaha. He was a former president of an international company. So even within that part, like, you got foundations who are giving out a lot of money who want to help minorities, but nobody making the decision of what the fund looks like, people from North Omaha.
And I just want to jump in and clarify my statement for Cheryl, or just in general. I was agreeing with you. I work for a smaller nonprofit that was started by a Black man, and I'll give you an example of what we're speaking to. We launched a summer program with a grant from the mayor's office, and then when it was time basically to, whatever the specific terminology, renew or reapply, whatever the case may be, the money that, and I don't know if it how or when it switched hands definitively, but basically the funding that was put forth for us to continue that summer program through the fall and winter was given to the police department. Now, depending on who you ask and what part of town you're in, they're going to say that that was a more appropriate release or allocation of those funds. But if you are being impacted or supported and empowered through the activities and the actions of this nonprofit, then you would be upset. So I was definitely agreeing with you, Cheryl. The money goes to nonprofits that don't have roots in North Omaha. They don't have a presence in North Omaha. They don't even know where locations and sites are in North Omaha for meetings and other events and things of that nature. So definitely, I agree with you there. And I was just kind of speaking to it again, just as someone who is in that sector. I mean, I'm qualified to speak to it, but and thank you, senators, as well for that.
Thank you. So let's see, we're not getting any other questions from the audience at the moment. And I see that we've got about 10 minutes left. Was there anything, Senators McKinney and Wayne, that you would like to sort of say in closing to help wrap this up, to give the folks who are participating tonight a sense of next steps that you'll be engaging in and how the community can be involved, and how they can reach out or participate in this planning process that the two of you are engaging in one way or another?
I would say next steps is, taking in everything that we've been kind of taking in from a proposal perspective or idea perspective, and prior to session coming up with something to present to the legislature. I would say from now into January, if you have any ideas or any feedback for us, reach out. I would also encourage you to encourage the city and the county to get on board and as well. And those would be my biggest things.
Thank you, Senator McKinney. Senator Wayne?
I think it's going to just be a big lift. This is the first time in my political career that I feel pressure, because usually when you're the underdog and you just fighting, you just got to figure out how to get something, and whatever you get is better than nothing. But this time I feel like if we don't get it right this time, there's not going to be another time like it. So we got to get it right. I feel like if we don't get it right this time, there's not going to be another time like it. So we got to get it right.
Thank you. And so as you're embarking on that, I see Ajmal raising his hand. So go ahead, Ajmal.
Well, I know we're getting close to the end, but I want to make a couple of shameless plugs if I can, as the chair. One is we're really appreciative of both of y'all participating in this event. And it's kind of a rare event to have two state senators doing a Zoom meeting that aims on some of the concepts and topics we've approached today. We also heard there's an opportunity to go forward some other issues. One example I want to throw out is a week ago, we had the state ombudsman, we had the inspector general for child welfare, and we had the inspector for corrections. It was the first time in the history of Nebraska that these individuals have focused their presentation on families in North Omaha, as well as people who have loved ones in the correction. We know our correction system is dismal. They've been having problems all the time, but there's not enough people who are weighing in to challenge the abysmal conditions in Lincoln and in our correction system. So we would like to bring more people as more to these conversations. Sometime we will take positions, sometime we will not, but we think the importance of it is just having stakeholders and community people and residents and taxpayers exchange conversations is hopefully a healthy way so that we can deal with some of the contentions and issues that are not always shared. So we throw that out. Number two, we're going to bring the Foster Care Review Office director, maybe some of their staff, on the 16th of November, I think, to talk about something similar to this. And so we're going to invite people more and more to share with us and help us facilitate. Some people think we're a major organization with a lot of funds, and we're basically a mom and pop organization that's starting up. We're one of the very few agencies that have anti-racism in its mission statement. In spite of all the so-called diversity organizations and people who have never seen an African-American man in a leadership position on boards of directors, whatever, our goal is, how do we change that narrative in Nebraska? So we're saying to folks, challenge us, challenge each other, but more than anything, make our community and our state much more democratic. And as Malcolm X liked to say years ago, we are victims of American democracy. How do we change that so the outcomes look different? So I really appreciate folks participating tonight. And I heard very well that we need more grassroots and more people who are stakeholders in these conversations, and be quick to share with us what we also need to do to help bring those conversations to those who are in leadership and policy positions in our state. But thank you very much, both y'all and everyone who participated today.
And with that, we shall bid you good night, and thanks again, as Ajamal just said, for coming. I've put the evaluation link in the chat. It'll just take 2 minutes or less to finish that evaluation. We'd love to hear what you think worked well, what you think didn't work so well, and what you'd like us to focus on in the future. So good night, and see you all soon. Thank you.